Back to that trial, a guilty verdict. A jury in Chicago has just found Officer Jason Van Dyke guilty of second-degree murder. He was on trial for the death of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. He shot 16 times back in 2014. You see him here as the verdict is being read. Originally charged with first-degree murder, but jurors were allowed to consider second-degree charges, according to the judge. The jury finding him guilty of that, as well as 16 counts of aggravated battery. Joining me now, CNN legal analyst Areva Martin, and from outside the courthouse, CNN correspondent Ryan Young. Ryan, you have been covering this for years now. You even remember the protests that shut down Michigan Avenue. So today could have looked completely different if it was a different verdict.
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody was sort of waiting to see what happens. In fact, anyone who has a building on Michigan Avenue got a warning today about whether or not this verdict went any direction. They were ready to make sure they were able to respond. They had officers on 12-hour shifts to make sure there was an additional 4,000 officers who could respond to any problems throughout the city. But we now don't have to figure that out anymore, because we know the verdict went the way that protesters were hoping that it would go. And I wanted to show this behind us. These are the small group of protesters who gathered outside here of the courthouse, and there's another group that's on the inside who's actually doing a news conference as we speak. They're talking about how they want to see changes inside the police department. They hope this is the first of many changes that will happen. Of course, we talked about the fact that the superintendent who was in charge at the time actually was fired, and there's a new superintendent. All officers now carry tasers. There's body cameras. So that's been the conversation. I do want to say this. The defense team also spoke just about 5 minutes ago, and they were saying at the mic they do plan to appeal this case. They feel like Jason Van Dyke ran up against a brick wall, that the climate wasn't right, that there was no way that he was ever going to get a not guilty verdict here in the city, and they want to do a change of venue. So they're already having that conversation. In fact, the defense team is saying they don't believe any officer can do their job in the city if this moves forward the way it is. The people on the other side see it a different way. They think he went too far. And of course, it all comes down to that video and what you believe. Jason Van Dyke says that Laquan McDonald was moving toward him. And of course, when you watch the video, there are some people who say they didn't see that. So it depends on what happens next. But I think there is a sigh of relief from some people here in the community when it comes to the idea of there's going to be any unrest at all, because so far most people have been cheering, not only here outside the courthouse, but at City Hall and other locations throughout the city.
Yeah, Ryan, stand by. I want to bring in Areva to discuss just that, the appeal and change of venue. Areva, the prosecutor saying, look, her name Jody Gleason, there is no justification for the shooting of Laquan, saying not one shot, not the first shot, not the 16th shot. And we see that, she said, on the video. What do you think the chances of an appeal going through here and a change of venue?
Not very likely that he will be, that's Jason Van Dyke, Susan, will be successful in appeal. Look, this is what happens. When a defense lawyer loses a case, when his client is found guilty, it is not uncommon for the first thing to come out of their mouth is an appeal. They have an obligation to their clients to provide a zealous, defense, a zealous representation. So we would expect the defense attorney to say they're going to appeal this case. He hasn't cited to any errors with respect to the trial. He's talking about this general climate. And the reality is it's very, very difficult to get a guilty verdict when you prosecute a police officer. So contrary to what he's saying about how the jurors perhaps were persuaded by this climate that we live in, the climate has always been favorable to police officers. It's been very difficult to get
body cam, Areva, since the body cam. Do you think since the footage and body cams have come about that it's kind of leaning in the direction of getting the evidence? Because before it was the word of the officer. And in this particular case, I believe there's 3 officers charged with trying to cover up this in the police report. So this video was key here.
Absolutely, Susan. Video has changed the game in terms of police brutality cases, not just body cams, but bystanders, cell phone videos. We've seen play a critical role in a lot of these cases. But in this case, yes, it was the video that contradicted the testimony and statements given by Jason Van Dyke and other officers who've been charged with misconduct for lying about what happened at the scene of this incident. I think this is a great day for the judicial process because someone like Jason Van Dyke was found guilty on credible evidence. So it wasn't just the words of bystanders. It was 10 officers at the scene. It was a videotape that captured what happened that night. He's free to file an appeal, but I don't think that appeal is going to be successful.
And that's what we are hearing outside of the courthouse. Is Ryan still with us? Ryan, I understand they had 4,000 additional officers, and I heard you say they cleared out the courthouse too with non-essential workers. They made them leave for security purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. You had schools in the area getting ready to go on lockdown if this went a certain way, and there were people talking about, and there have been games that have been canceled or games have been rescheduled throughout the school system here, so you understand that people worry. There's also a big marathon here on Sunday, so people were worried that people would try to stop that. But that's all changed at this point. Now the big conversation is how do you move forward and what happens next? And of course, a lot of people are now saying they want police reforms. They want long-lasting police reforms. But if you take it step by step, you have to remember this is the first police officer in some nearly 40 years in Chicago that's been charged with first-degree murder.
Yeah, and Laquan's family, we are expected to hear from them and get their reaction to the verdict. They're going to speak at 4:30 Eastern time. We're going to take that as soon as we do hear from their family. And as we are hearing on the streets of Chicago today, justice for Laquan.